all of the decisions of the conclave are indeed political because the church is a social and political community. But the conclave is not generally affected by a whole lot of lobbying. And there are a lot of people who come to Rome with the idea of influencing the conclave in various ways.
The one thing that the Americans do have is money. And I think they are really hoping to shape the future of the church.
Now, the selection of the next pope is just around the corner. 133 cardinals will form the conclave as of Wednesday. There's been a lot made of the alleged divide between conservative and liberal-leaning potential candidates. JD Flynn is editor of The Pillar and former editor of the Catholic News Agency. Morning to you, JD.
Good morning, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Now, you've been mingling with the Cardinals in this sort of interim period. Of course, there's been days of mourning as well from the funeral mass of Pope Francis until conclave begins. What are you hearing from Cardinals? Is there this sort of divide, or is the contest more open than that?
Well, I think it's more open than that, and I think the issues probably don't easily boil down to liberal and conservative. The real issue for a lot of cardinals has to do with just the management of the Vatican. As you might know, the Vatican is in a very dire financial situation, and that has impact on the church all around the world. There's also there have been problems with kind of bureaucratic management over the past couple of years. You'll recall that. A high-ranking Curial cardinal was convicted of embezzlement not very long ago, and just last week, the Vatican Secretariat of State was ordered to pay about $4 million in legal costs to a British businessman who with whom it has had some shady dealings. And so there's a kind of administrative dysfunction in the Vatican right now that for a lot of cardinals is priority number one. Those I speak with, though, say that they're not quite sure how to assess, exactly who's competent to manage that. That's what they're trying to suss out now, who has a plan to sort of right the ship from an administrative standpoint, while also doing the really important work of the Pope, which is to be a chief representative of Catholicism and evangelist for the gospel. And so it is, from my point of view, a pretty open election right now. The cardinals I speak with say they're really not sure even who they'll vote for, let alone who will emerge as the Pope.
It makes for an intriguing, period of time. Who knows how long conclave will go on for? But on the issue of money, JD, our paper, the Sunday Times, reports this morning on the American donors who have descended on Rome offering to help with that operational deficit. And there is questions about the part that money will play in kind of influencing cardinals, perhaps, just as conclave begins. Is perhaps uncomfortable for rich Americans to be there to write some checks.
Well, first of all, that sounds like a great story. I'm glad I'm a Times subscriber because I can't wait to read it.
Very good. Points for you.
But the conclave is not all of the decisions of the conclave are indeed political because the church is a social and political community. But the conclave is not generally affected by a whole lot of lobbying. And there are a lot of people who come to Rome with the idea of influencing the conclave in various ways. And most of the time, they don't have very much access at all. So I can't comment on that specifically because I've not opened the Times yet this morning. But I'd be surprised if it was a factor that even very many cardinals were aware of.
Yeah,
the cardinals tend to be a fairly insulated group, even during this time of what we call the general congregations when they're coming together. They tend to be speaking mostly with one another, with their aides, with other people in the life of the church, less so than kind of anyone who might be here to lobby.
Just finally, JD, and we have about 30 seconds for this, but US President Trump has been criticised by some after he posted an AI-generated image of himself as the Pope just days after he joked to reporters, "I'd like to be the Pope." Right. What's your response to that?
Well, as an American, I get asked what I think about what the president is doing pretty often. That was a strange one, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes, very strange indeed. Is it disrespectful?
I understand why a lot of people certainly think it is. I think it's not my place probably to say that, but I think that for the Cardinals, I think it has seemed to some like a mockery of the process or a diminishment of the significance of what's happening here, to be sure.
Now, we could have a new pope by this time next week. The conclave, which will elect the 267th pontiff, will begin on Wednesday. But the piety of the candidates may not be the only consideration. Could it come down to American money? US donors have descended on Rome, offering to help. But how much influence do they have? JD Flynn, the editor of The Pillar, a Catholic news site, says the selection process is always contentious.
all of the decisions of the conclave are indeed political because the church is a social and political community. But the conclave is not generally affected by a whole lot of lobbying. And there are a lot of people who come to Rome with the idea of influencing the conclave in various ways. And most of the time, they don't have very much access at all. So I can't comment on that specifically because I've not opened the Times yet this morning. But I'd be surprised if it was a factor that even very many cardinals were aware of.
Well, the former editor of the Catholic Herald, William Cash, has been looking into this for the Sunday Times. He's with us now. Good morning.
Morning.
I didn't realise, William, until I read your brilliant piece in the paper today, that actually the Catholic Church is pretty hard up.
Yes, well, the truth is that historically speaking, of course, papacies have been sort of parts of financial transactions. I'm talking about the sort of Medici times. I think it is true to say that no one is suggesting that the Vatican can be bought. I think what people are saying is that there is some soft power that is being generated by the sheer scale of money that Americans have. The Papal Foundation, which I've written about in this piece in the Sunday Times, last year gave away $14 million. It's now trying to raise $750 million. And someone said that this room could possibly raise as much as $1 billion. We have a situation where Pope Francis has said himself that there is a sort of existential financial crisis in the Vatican because of the pension deficit and because of the sex abuse scandal, especially in America and other places. Dioceses have gone bankrupt. And you'll remember the story about the scandal in London relating to the Knightsbridge property development, where the Vatican overspent by £100 million. So the truth is that the church is facing a financial crisis, and the one thing that the Americans do have is money. And I think they are really hoping to shape the future of the church. I do agree with your previous contributor from the Pillar that it's not a sort of transaction, you give us this amount of money, you can have this pope. There's not that sort of horse trading. But I've been in Rome for the last week, and what is clear, and that's why the piece around this week, is that the real papal hustings, the real decisions, the real alliances are taking place now as we speak in Rome. And by the time that the 133 cardinals go into the conclave, it's pretty clear that they will have narrowed down who they're going to vote for.
And when you talk about that soft power and how this American money wants to shape the future of the church, is all this money coming from the same viewpoint of what the future of the Catholic Church should be? Or is there a discussion amongst those people with that huge amount of cash that they want to put towards the Catholic Church?
Well, that's a really good question, because I think what people are looking at the conclave is, first of all, how long it will last. People are saying that a lot of insiders actually want it to be a short conclave because, with all the world media camped outside St. Peter's, a protracted stay in the Sistine Chapel will show that the church is hopelessly divided and that they can't agree on anything. Now, America is not going to get its own first pope, but what it does show is holds up a mirror to the deep divides within the Catholic Church, and that is certainly true also of the Catholic leadership in America. When I was editor of the Catholic Herald, we published something called Catholic Leaders of Today, about 300 of the sort of wealthiest movers and shakers, influencers and philanthropists. And they're pretty much divided, I'd say probably 60-40. A lot of the money is conservative Republican money. But the truth is that they do want very different things. You're right. I mean, some of the people in Rome would have wanted a Pope Francis II continuity candidate. They might be inclined to vote for someone like Cardinal Parolin, who's the current Secretary of State. But a lot of people I spoke to actually want a complete change of direction. Even Cardinal Dolan of New York has said that it's time to perhaps go back to a more traditional pope. And certainly the big American money wants a completely radical change of direction for the church. We'll probably be backing someone like Peter Erdo. Now, with Peter Erdo from Hungary is a sort of certainly a conservative, but he has been very careful not to clash with Pope Francis. And I spent some time with him in Budapest, and he learned English in Plymouth, and he told me that actually he has a great fondness for English fish and chips.
I love that. And I must say your piece in the paper is so good today to read just about sort of the influences of the older cardinals who obviously can't vote in the conclave, but they're very much making their opinions felt. The conversations in the restaurants around the Vatican. It's absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for speaking to us this morning, William.
Thank you very much, Claire.
Take care. Former editor of Catholic Herald there, William Cash. With your digital subscription, it is well worth reading this today. There's a real insight into what is going on behind the scenes, the different influences and the impact that it will have on who will be decided who the next pope will be.